The council chamber of the Krell Dominion sparkled with strange crystalline walls that glowed with soft blue light. High Commander Thraxus stood tall before the assembled leaders, his insect-like armor shining under the cold lights. His 4 arms gestured as he spoke, and his mandibles clicked together with confidence. "The primitive world we call Terra 3 has resources our empire needs," Thraxus announced to the council. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "Our intelligence teams report it as a Class 13 Deathworld, but the creatures living there are far behind us in technology. They still use old chemical explosives for their weapons. Simple bullets and rockets. Nothing compared to our plasma rifles and energy shields." A smaller Krell named Vexel, who served as the science officer, tapped nervously on his data tablet. His antennae twitched with worry. "Commander, a Class 13 designation means the planet is extremely dangerous. Perhaps we should reconsider." "It means the planet has some dangerous animals and bad weather," Thraxus interrupted sharply. "Nothing our soldiers cannot handle easily. We have energy shields that can stop any attack. We have plasma weapons that can burn through steel. We have 10,000 elite soldiers, the finest warriors in the Dominion. These humans have primitive guns that shoot metal bullets. This will not even be a fair fight." Thraxus pulled up a holographic display of Earth. The blue and green planet rotated slowly in the air. "Look at it. A water world with a thin atmosphere. The inhabitants build simple structures and drive vehicles on roads. They are barely beginning to explore their own solar system. This is not a threat. This is an opportunity." The other council members whispered among themselves. Some looked uncertain, but none wanted to appear weak or afraid. After a brief discussion they voted. The decision was unanimous. The invasion would begin immediately. 3 weeks later, the Krell Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Hundreds of ships, all bristling with weapons and carrying thousands of soldiers. Commander Thraxus stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at the planet that would soon belong to the Krell Empire. "Report," he ordered. A technician at a nearby console studied the readings. "Atmospheric composition shows dangerously high levels of oxygen, Commander. Much higher than our home world. Surface gravity is measured at 1.3 times our standard. The planet has an unusually strong magnetic field. Tectonic activity is highly unstable with frequent earthquakes. Weather patterns are chaotic and unpredictable." "And what about the humans?" Thraxus asked, not concerned by the environmental data. "They are concentrated in large groups across all continents. Technology assessment confirms they have discovered basic fusion power and primitive space travel. Their weapons are entirely kinetic-based. Metal projectiles fired by chemical reactions. Military response capability is evaluated as minimal. They pose no significant threat to our forces." Thraxus spread his mandibles in what the Krell considered a smile. "Excellent. Begin the landing operation. Target the equatorial zone where our sensors detect the richest mineral deposits. We will establish a base and begin mining operations. I expect this campaign to be finished within 1 standard week." The first wave of drop ships detached from the main fleet and began their descent through Earth's atmosphere. Their shields glowed bright orange as they pushed through the air at tremendous speed. The ships were designed for rapid deployment, each carrying 200 fully armed soldiers. They landed in a region humans called the Amazon Basin. The Krell sensors had identified it as strategically valuable because of its resources and relatively low human population density. It seemed like the perfect location to establish their initial foothold. The massive doors of the drop ships opened with a hiss of pressurized air. 10,000 Krell soldiers marched out onto alien soil for the first time. Their plasma rifles were charged and ready. Their energy shields hummed with power. Their armor gleamed in the strange yellow sunlight of this distant world. The soldiers looked around at the dense jungle surrounding them. Massive trees rose hundreds of feet into the air. Strange sounds echoed from the shadows. The air felt thick and heavy, filled with moisture. It was nothing like their dry, cool home world. "Establish a perimeter," ordered squad leader Thraxus. "Set up the communications array and power generators. We secure this area first, then begin the advance." The Krell soldiers moved with military precision, following their training perfectly. They had conquered 17 worlds before this one. They knew exactly what to do. But within 6 hours of landing, something went terribly wrong. The first soldier started screaming. Then another. Then dozens more. They clawed at their environmental suits, tearing at the seals. Some collapsed and stopped moving. Others thrashed on the ground as if fighting an invisible enemy. Commander Thraxus received the first casualty report with disbelief. 300 soldiers dead or dying. and not a single shot had been fired. Captain James Holland lay perfectly still in the thick jungle canopy, his binoculars focused on the alien encampment below. He had been watching the Krell for 3 days now, studying their movements and behaviors. Beside him, Sergeant William Cooper shifted slightly, careful not to make any noise that might give away their position. "That's the 5th one in an hour," William whispered, watching another Krell soldier collapse to the ground. The alien creature twitched violently for about 30 seconds before going completely still. "They're dropping dead and we haven't even fired a single shot." James adjusted his binoculars to get a better view. "Look closely at their suits. See those small tears and gaps? Their environmental protection isn't designed for Earth. Every breath they take is filled with bacteria they've never encountered before. The air here is full of fungal spores. The insects are biting through weak points in their armor. Their bodies simply can't handle it." Down in the Krell encampment, Commander Thraxus walked through rows of sick and dying soldiers with growing horror. The medical tent was overflowing with casualties. He had expected to lose soldiers in battle, but this was something entirely different. His army was being destroyed by an enemy they couldn't even see. "Give me an explanation," Thraxus demanded from Medical Officer Draxus, who looked exhausted and defeated. Draxus pulled up data on his tablet with shaking hands. "The air on this planet carries millions of microscopic organisms that our filters cannot stop completely. They enter through the smallest gaps in our suits. Our immune systems have no defense against them. The water contains parasites and bacteria our biology cannot process. The local insects inject venoms and toxins that our medical database has no information about. We cannot treat what we do not understand." "What about the temperature?" Thraxus asked, noticing how many soldiers were suffering from heat exhaustion. "The heat and humidity are degrading our equipment much faster than our engineers predicted. Power cells are draining at 3 times the normal rate. Weapon systems are overheating. The moisture is causing electrical failures throughout our systems." Thraxus felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. True fear. "What about the native humans? Have we made contact with them yet?" Draxus's antennae drooped. "No direct contact, Commander. But our scouts report that they are out there, watching us, studying us, waiting for something." The waiting ended at dawn 2 days later. The attack did not come the way Thraxus expected. There was no organized army marching toward them. No vehicles or aircraft approaching. Instead, the jungle itself seemed to explode with violence. Carefully placed explosive charges detonated all around the Krell perimeter at exactly the same moment. Massive trees fell across supply routes, crushing equipment and soldiers underneath. Communications towers exploded in balls of fire. Power generators sparked and went dark. In seconds, the Krell found themselves blind, confused, and separated. Then the gunfire started. Lieutenant Emma Clark moved through the jungle canopy like a ghost, her squad following close behind. They had spent 4 days studying the captured Krell equipment that had been recovered from dead soldiers. The human engineers and scientists worked around the clock to find weaknesses. Emma had personally briefed the command about what they discovered. Their energy shields are incredibly strong against directed energy weapons like lasers. But they're calibrated specifically for their home world's magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field is different and it fluctuates constantly. This causes problems in their shield systems. If we hit them with rapid gunfire with lots of bullets fired very quickly, their shields overload and fail completely. She had been absolutely right. The Krell soldiers fell by the dozens as human bullets tore through their failing shields. The crackling blue energy field sparked and sputtered before collapsing entirely. Those aliens who survived the initial ambush tried to retreat deeper into the jungle, but they found themselves being hunted by an enemy that knew this terrain perfectly. The jungle that had already killed hundreds of Krell through disease and environmental hazards now became a weapon in human hands. The soldiers led aliens into quicksand pits. They guided them toward territories controlled by aggressive wildlife. They used the terrain itself as a maze to separate and confuse the invaders. Thraxus watched his tactical display in horror as unit after unit went offline. Red markers indicating dead soldiers spread across the map like a disease. "How are they doing this?" he shouted at his remaining officers. "They're primitives. They have simple weapons. We have technology that should make us invincible." Vexil, the science officer, spoke quietly from the corner of the command center. "Commander, I do not think they are the primitives here. I think perhaps we are." Thraxus wanted to punish Vexil for such a statement, but he could not argue with the results. His proud army of 10,000 elite soldiers had been reduced to 7,000 in just 1 week. and they had killed fewer than 200 humans in return. The jungle continued to take more Krell lives than human weapons ever could. 3 long months passed and the Krell Empire continued to pour soldiers and resources into the failing campaign. But Earth consumed everything they sent like a hungry beast that could never be satisfied. In Geneva, Switzerland, the combined military command center hummed with activity. Representatives from every nation on Earth worked together with a unity that had never been seen before in human history. General Thomas Hartley stood before a massive holographic display that showed Krell positions scattered across the globe. "They have established bases on 4 continents," Thomas reported to the assembled commanders. "But every single base is trapped. They cannot get supplies through our blockades. Every transport ship we destroy leaves them more desperate and hungry. And every single day they spend on our planet kills more of them than our weapons do." Colonel Robert Harris from the United States Marine Corps studied the casualty numbers on his tablet. "What is our current estimate of their remaining forces?" "Approximately 4,000 Krell soldiers are still alive, down from their original 10,000. Thomas paused and let that number sink in. "We have lost about 1,200 soldiers in combat. But Earth itself has killed roughly 2,000 Krell through disease, environmental hazards and attacks from wildlife. The planet is doing half our work for us." Commander Olivia Preston from the Royal Navy leaned forward with interest. "What about their technology? Are we making progress in understanding it?" Thomas smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "We are doing better than understanding it. We are already using their own weapons against them. Their plasma rifles actually work better in Earth's atmosphere than they calculated. And now our soldiers carry them into battle. Their communications were encrypted with codes we cracked in week 3. We hear everything they say to each other. Their medical technology?" He paused. "Completely useless against Earth diseases and bacteria." Far away in the frozen wasteland of Siberia, Commander Thraxus huddled inside a reinforced bunker with the last of his officers. His once beautiful armor was now scratched, dented and covered in dirt. His mandibles trembled constantly, not from cold alone, but from something the Krell rarely experienced in their long history of conquest. Pure, overwhelming fear. "Give me a status report," Thraxus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Vexel checked his failing data tablet. The screen flickered and showed corrupted information. 47 soldiers remain alive, Commander. We have no food supplies left. The last transport ship was destroyed 3 weeks ago. The Empire has officially declared this operation a complete failure. They have abandoned us here." "What about the humans?" Thraxus asked, though he already knew the answer. "They have surrounded our position completely. But they are not attacking. They are just waiting out there in the snow." Thraxus understood the strategy perfectly. The humans did not need to waste ammunition or risk their own soldiers. Winter was coming to Siberia, and the cold would finish what humanity had started. Earth itself would kill the last of the Krell invaders. One by one over the following weeks, his soldiers died around him. Some starved because their bodies could not process any food found on Earth. Others froze because their equipment was never designed for such extreme cold. The relentless Siberian winter dropped temperatures to levels that made their heating systems fail. A few desperate soldiers tried to surrender by walking out with their arms raised, but human soldiers shot them immediately. Humanity was not interested in taking prisoners. Finally, only Commander Thraxus remained alive in the empty bunker. He stood alone in the center of the cold metal room, waiting for death to come. He had stopped eating days ago. His body was shutting down slowly. He thought about his home world and wondered if anyone would remember his name after this disaster. The bunker door suddenly exploded inward with a deafening blast. Human soldiers poured through the smoke and debris, their weapons all pointed directly at him. Thraxus raised his 4 arms slowly in the universal gesture of surrender. "I am defeated," he said in broken English, words he had learned from intercepted human broadcasts. "Kill me now and be done with this." A tall human stepped forward through the smoke. He wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer with many medals on his chest. This was General Thomas Hartley, though Thraxus did not know his name or rank. "No," Thomas said firmly, his voice echoing in the empty bunker. "You are not going to die here, Commander. You are going home." Thraxus stared at the human in confusion. Going home? Why would they allow that? It made no sense. Thomas smiled coldly. "Someone needs to tell your empire exactly what happened here. Someone needs to explain why 10,000 soldiers fell to a species you thought was primitive. You are going to be our messenger, Commander. You are going to carry our warning to the stars." The humans kept Commander Thraxus in a military medical facility for 2 full months. Human doctors worked on him every day, studying his strange alien biology and treating his many injuries. A kind woman named Dr. Helen Wright, who specialized in studying alien life forms, visited him regularly to check his progress. Thraxus slowly realized they were not healing him out of mercy or kindness. They were making sure he stayed alive long enough to deliver their message to the galaxy. General Thomas came to visit Thraxus almost every single day. He would sit in a chair beside the medical bed and talk to the broken alien commander. Sometimes he brought food that Thraxus could actually digest. Other times he just sat quietly and watched. "Do you understand why you lost this war?" Thomas asked one afternoon, his voice calm and measured. Thraxus thought carefully before answering. "You had greater numbers than we expected. You knew the terrain better than our maps showed. You had home advantage." "No," Thomas said, shaking his head slowly. He pulled a chair closer and sat down. "Let me explain something important about Earth and about humans. Every other species in your galaxy evolved on stable, predictable worlds. Worlds with regular weather patterns. Worlds with manageable predators. Worlds with diseases that could be understood and controlled." He leaned forward and looked directly into Thraxus's compound eyes. "Earth is different. Our planet spent 3 million years actively trying to kill our ancestors. Every single predator, every disease, every storm, every earthquake, every flood, every drought, every famine. Our world tried to murder us in every way possible. And somehow we survived. We did not just barely survive either. We thrived. We became the apex predator on a planet that was already full of apex predators." Thomas stood up and walked to the window. "You brought an army to fight survivors, Commander. We have been at war with our own planet since our species first existed. We learned to fight before we learned to farm. We learned to kill before we learned to build. Fighting your soldiers?" He shrugged casually. "That was just practice for us." Dr. Helen Wright entered the room carrying a data tablet. "General, his vital signs are stable now. He is strong enough for transport back to his home world." "Excellent," Thomas said. He turned back to face Thraxus. "You are going to return to your Krell Empire now. You are going to stand before your leaders and tell them exactly what happened here on Earth. Every single detail. Every death. Every mistake. Every moment of your defeat. You are going to explain why an army of 10,000 elite soldiers fell to a species you believed was primitive and weak." Thraxus felt confused by this plan. "Why would you let me live? Why not just kill me and end this?" Captain James Holland stepped into the room from the doorway. He had been listening to the conversation. "Because dead martyrs become legends that inspire others. But living failures become warnings that create fear. We want your empire to fear us, Commander. We want every species in the galaxy to know what happens when they come to Earth with hostile intentions." The humans loaded Thraxus onto one of his own captured ships. Human engineers had spent weeks modifying the vessel, stripping out Krell systems and replacing them with hybrid human technology. The ship was faster now and more efficient than it had ever been under Krell control. The cargo hold contained carefully organized documentation of everything that had happened. Video footage showed Krell soldiers dying in the jungle. Medical reports detailed exactly how Earth diseases had ravaged alien biology. Environmental analysis explained in scientific detail how the planet itself had become a weapon. Battle recordings showed human tactics and adaptability. And there was one final message recorded personally by General Thomas Hartley. His face filled the screen as he spoke directly to whoever would watch. "To the Galactic Council and all species who might be listening. Earth is now under quarantine by order of humanity. Any ship that approaches our world without explicit permission and invitation will be destroyed without warning. We did not ask for this war. We did not want this conflict. But we finished it completely. Remember this moment. Remember what happened to the Krell Dominion. Remember that humans are survivors." The modified ship launched from Earth carrying its single passenger. Thraxus sat alone in the command chair, surrounded by documentation of his failure. He watched through the viewport as the blue planet grew smaller behind him. He thought about the words General Thomas had spoken. Words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "You brought an army to fight survivors." And Thraxus knew with absolute certainty that humanity had only shown the galaxy a small fraction of what they were truly capable of doing. The orbital defense platforms surrounding the Krell home world detected the approaching ship with immediate alarm. The vessel was broadcasting proper Krell identification codes, but the design had been changed dramatically. Strange modifications covered the hull. The engines burned with unusual efficiency. The The security officers did not know what to make of it. Commander Thraxus's ship limped slowly into the main docking station. The airlocks connected with a hiss of equalizing pressure. When the doors opened, Thraxus emerged alone. He looked nothing like the proud commander who had left months earlier. His armor was damaged and poorly repaired. His body was thin from starvation and stress. His eyes held a haunted look that the receiving officers had never seen before in any Krell warrior. Within 6 hours, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from over 100 different species gathered in the massive council chamber. They had all heard rumors about the failed Earth invasion, but nobody knew the full truth yet. Thraxus stood in the center of the enormous room, surrounded by curious and judgmental faces from dozens of different worlds. He felt small and broken under their stares. His testimony lasted 3 full hours. He showed them video footage of Krell soldiers dying in the jungle. He displayed medical reports showing how Earth diseases had killed thousands. He presented environmental data that explained how the planet itself was a weapon. 10,000 of the Krell Dominion's finest soldiers, Thraxus concluded, his voice hollow and empty. Reduced to just one survivor. Not defeated by superior technology. Not beaten by greater numbers. But destroyed by a species that evolved to survive conditions we could not even imagine or understand. Ambassador Vrelt of the Pacification League spoke up from his elevated seat. Are you truly saying that they defeated your entire army through environmental adaptation? That seems difficult to believe. No, Thraxus said firmly, his mandibles clicking with emphasis. I am saying that the environment itself is their weapon. The humans did not just survive on a Class 13 Deathworld. They completely mastered it over millions of years. They turned every dangerous aspect of their planet against us. The air killed us. The water poisoned us. The animals hunted us. The weather destroyed our equipment. And the humans. He paused. The humans just watched and waited while their world did half the work. He pulled up the final piece of evidence on the main display screen. The video showed human soldiers carrying and firing modified Krell plasma rifles with greater accuracy and efficiency than Krell soldiers ever achieved. They adapt faster than any species I have ever encountered in my career. Within weeks of capturing our equipment, they had completely reverse-engineered the technology. Within months they had improved it and made it better. Every single advantage we possessed they either neutralized or stole for themselves. They learn. They change. They improve constantly. The council chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Species that had never agreed on anything before all shared the same expression. Fear. High Counselor Maxim, an elderly representative from the oldest civilization in the galaxy, finally spoke in his wavering voice. What is your official recommendation, Commander Thraxus? Quarantine Earth immediately and permanently. Classify humanity as a Class 13 Apex survivor species. Mark their solar system as forbidden territory. And pray to whatever gods you believe in that they never decide to leave their world and come looking for us. Another counselor laughed nervously. Surely you are being overly dramatic, Commander? They are just one species on one small planet. Thraxus's voice suddenly grew loud and sharp, filled with anger and trauma. I watched them hunt my soldiers through jungles that killed half my force before the humans fired a single bullet. I watched them adapt to our superior weapons in real time. I watched them turn diseases into weapons of war. I watched them use weather patterns as military tactics. I watched them transform their entire planet into one massive killing field. They are not just survivors, Counselor. They are the apex predator of a world that breeds nothing but apex predators. The vote happened quickly. It was unanimous. Earth would be quarantined immediately. No species would be permitted to approach the Sol system for any reason. Humanity would be left completely alone. Not out of respect for their rights, but out of pure fear of what they might do if provoked again. Thraxus lived the rest of his days in isolation on a remote colony world. His testimony was recorded and distributed throughout the entire galaxy as an official warning. Other species spoke his name in hushed, frightened whispers. He became known as the commander who survived Earth, though he never felt like a survivor. He felt like a messenger of doom. In his nightmares, which came every single night, he still heard General Thomas Hartley's words echoing endlessly. You brought an army to fight survivors. On Earth, satellites constantly watched the stars above. In military command centers buried deep underground, human operators monitored all galactic communications they could intercept. The humans knew they had been quarantined. They knew the galaxy now feared them. General Thomas stood in the war room deep inside NORAD Mountain, studying a holographic star map that showed nearby solar systems. Major Alice Thompson, one of his most trusted officers, walked up beside him. "Do you think they will actually leave us alone now?" Alice asked quietly. Thomas smiled, but it was not a warm or friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator sizing up future prey. "For now they will keep their distance. But they have seen what we can do when fighting on our own world, in our own territory. I think they are absolutely terrified to imagine what we might do if we brought the fight to their worlds instead." He turned away from the glowing display. "Begin Project Exodus immediately. Start production on the new ships. If the galaxy will not let us join them peacefully and as equals." His expression hardened into something cold and determined. "Then we will join them on our own terms. And they will learn to accept us." Across Earth, factories began working day and night producing warships that combined human ingenuity with captured Krell technology. Military training facilities prepared soldiers for combat in space and on alien worlds. Scientists studied the biological weaknesses of every species represented on the Galactic Council. Engineers designed weapons specifically meant to fight in different atmospheres and gravities. Humanity had been invaded by an arrogant enemy who thought humans were primitive and weak. Now humanity would make absolutely certain that nobody in the galaxy would ever make that mistake again. And the Galactic Council, in their fear and their arrogance, had accidentally taught a species of natural-born survivors one final critical lesson. Humans were not alone in the universe anymore. And they were definitely not content to stay hidden on their home world. A human general stood on a spacecraft in orbit, looking down at Earth through the observation window. The blue and green planet rotated slowly below him. "They wanted to conquer a death world," he said quietly to himself. "They forgot that we are the deadliest thing living on it." Humanity prepared to reach for the stars.